We are KB and Jasmine, and welcome to Beyond the Silver Screen.
All right, ready to dive deep into the world of Charlie Chaplin.
Let's do it.
Going beyond the tramp, the mustache, the waddle, all that.
Right, the man behind the icon.
Exactly.
It's fascinating how, his public persona and personal drive were almost at odds.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was this comedic genius, but craved control. Even wished actors could perfectly mimic his every move on screen.
Like a puppet master.
Exactly.
Wow, wouldn't that stifle the creativity of the other actors, though?
Absolutely, and it really speaks volumes about his personality.
Okay.
Think about his writing process. He was constantly revising, dictating, scribbling, retyping.
Oh, wow.
Almost like this, tortured artist striving for perfection.
Interesting. So this meticulous side, this need for control, did it extend beyond just the film set?
It seems so. Chaplin had this almost paradoxical fascination with language.
What do you mean?
He made it a point to learn one new word every day.
Really?
Expanding his vocabulary.
Oh, wow.
Words like ineffable or levitus.
It makes you wonder, was this a self-conscious effort to overcome his lack of formal education? Or was it genuine intellectual curiosity?
It could be both.
Yeah.
But what's intriguing is how this carefully crafted vocabulary coexisted with his raw, almost poetic ability to evoke a sense of place and feeling.
Okay.
He described his childhood neighborhood, Lambeth, as this trivia from which my soul was born.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Makes you want to know more about those early years, the environment that shaped him.
Well, those early years were far from idyllic.
Oh, really?
Poverty, an absent father battling alcoholism.
Oh, wow.
A mother struggling to keep afloat as a single parent.
It's heartbreaking to imagine, especially knowing that his mother eventually suffered a mental breakdown.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Those early experiences undoubtedly contributed to Chaplin's resilience and drive later in life. But amidst those hardships, his talent for performance was already blossoming.
Right. Imagine being 5 years old.
Yeah.
Stepping onto a stage to fill in for your mother and captivating the audience.
Oh, yeah.
That's not just stage fright.
Right.
That's a trial by fire.
It speaks to an innate ability to connect with an audience even at such a young age. And from there, those early experiences, from clog dancing with the 8 Lancashire lads to acting out Dickens characters, they were like stepping stones on his path to greatness.
He seemed to soak up everything around him.
Oh, he did.
Remember the story of him picking up money thrown on stage during a performance?
Oh, yeah. Talk about resourceful.
And then there was his brief stint acting as a cat alongside the famous Marceline.
Right.
His improvised antics nearly shut down the show, but they also revealed his willingness to push boundaries, to experiment.
Exactly.
It's amazing how those early experiences foreshadow the comedic genius he would become.
Right.
Yeah.
He wasn't just performing, he was observing, learning from seasoned professionals like Marie Lloyd and Bransby Williams. He was drawn to their dedication, the stories they embodied, and even the literature behind their characters.
It's almost like he was laying the foundation for his own artistry.
Yeah.
Absorbing everything he could.
And that foundation proved invaluable when he made the leap from stage to film.
From stage to film.
Although it wasn't a smooth transition.
Really?
Initially, he was hesitant, almost shy about joining Keystone Studios.
That's surprising considering the bold, larger-than-life characters he would create.
Right.
What made him hesitate?
Imagine walking onto a film set surrounded by established actors like Ford Sterling and Ellsworth.
Yeah.
Their skepticism, even their good-natured ribbing, must have been daunting.
He had to prove himself all over again.
Exactly.
Yep.
But then came that pivotal moment. The improvised comedic performance during a Harry Weldon sketch. It was like a spark ignited.
Okay.
And Chaplin, the comedic force we know, began to emerge.
His timing, his physicality, his ability to transform a simple scenario into something hilarious. It all seemed to click.
And from there, his rise was meteoric.
Wow.
He was soon directing his own films, earning bonuses, his confidence growing with each project.
But he wasn't content to just be a director, was he?
No, he wanted more creative control, a chance to tell his own stories. And that ambition led him to Essanay, where he collaborated with Bronco Billy, the king of westerns.
Talk about a clash of styles.
Right.
I can't imagine Chaplin in a cowboy hat. But this collaboration must have pushed him in new directions.
It did.
Okay.
He wasn't just playing a part anymore. He was becoming Charlie Chaplin, the auteur, the visionary.
This is where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
Because we start to see the man behind the tramp, the filmmaker,
Yeah.
the social creature, the observer of humanity.
It's a side of Chaplin that often gets overshadowed by the iconic image, but it's essential to understanding the depth and complexity of the man.
Absolutely.
So it's fascinating how Chaplin navigated the social whirlwind of Hollywood.
Yeah, he was rubbing shoulders with legends, remember?
Right.
Like Douglas Fairbanks and Mary Pickford.
Exactly.
The epitome of Hollywood glamour.
Right. And while Chaplin enjoyed their company, he also seemed to gently poke fun at their lavish lifestyle.
Really?
Yeah, he had a different perspective on relationships, valuing genuine connection over social climbing.
So even amidst the glitz and glamour, he maintained a sense of detachment.
It seems so.
Interesting.
He preferred a small circle of trusted friends to the constant spotlight,
Okay.
but that didn't mean he was a recluse.
Right.
Chaplin had this incredible knack for attracting fascinating people. Remember his descriptions of lavish dinners with Fairbanks?
Oh, yeah.
Or watching the sunrise while Hawaiian music serenaded Mary Pickford?
It sounds like something straight out of one of his films.
Right.
Larger than life.
Yet even in those extravagant settings, you sense Chaplin observing it all with a touch of irony. Almost as if he was seeing the absurdity beneath the surface.
Was this detachment a way of protecting his artistic integrity, do you think?
It's possible he was deeply committed to his art.
Yeah.
And perhaps that required a certain distance from the superficiality of Hollywood society.
It makes you wonder if that same perspective informed his observations of other artists, like his encounter with Nijinsky.
Right, the legendary ballet dancer.
Exactly.
Chaplin saw a darkness, a tragic undercurrent beneath Nijinsky's brilliance.
Wow.
He even sensed a fragility, a mind on the verge of collapse, just months before Nijinsky was diagnosed with schizophrenia.
That's chilling how perceptive he was.
Yeah.
How he could see the vulnerability beneath the polished facade.
Right.
He had a similar experience with Pavlova, another ballet icon,
Oh, yeah.
sensing a profound sadness within her artistry.
He seemed drawn to the human condition, the complexities and contradictions within each person.
And this wasn't limited to artists, right?
Yeah, not at all.
He had a similar knack for seeing through the public personas of historical figures like Winston Churchill and Albert Einstein.
Oh, absolutely.
Those anecdotes are priceless. Churchill teasing him about his socialist views, threatening to, cut his head off if he dared to repeat them in England.
Or Einstein's passion for playing the violin, even if his technique wasn't quite concert level.
Right.
Chaplin had a way of finding humor in the most unexpected places. And those stories offer these fascinating glimpses into the personalities behind the public masks.
It's a reminder that even the most influential figures are human, with their own quirks and vulnerabilities.
Absolutely.
But let's be honest, Chaplin's own life was far from a fairy tale.
No, it wasn't.
His personal life was tumultuous.
Yeah.
With multiple marriages, scandals, and that very public paternity case with Joan Barry.
It's a stark contrast to the joyful, carefree persona of the tramp.
Yeah.
Those experiences undoubtedly took an emotional toll on him.
Did this personal turmoil fuel his creative process, or did it make it more difficult to maintain the illusion of the tramp on screen?
It's hard to say for sure, but it's a testament to his resilience that he was able to create such joyful and poignant work amidst personal struggles.
And amidst the turmoil, he found a lasting love with his final wife, Una O'Neill.
Right. Their relationship seemed to bring him a sense of peace and genuine partnership that lasted until his death.
It's a reminder that even with all the fame and success, he was still searching for connection, for love, just like anyone else.
Right.
But his personal life wasn't the only source of turmoil, was it?
No.
He faced political persecution, controversy surrounding his film Monsieur Verdoux, and eventual exile from the United States.
Those were difficult times. He was accused of being a communist sympathizer, deemed a threat to national security.
Wow.
It's a dark chapter in American history, and it had a profound impact on Chaplin's life and work.
It's a reminder that even comedic geniuses aren't immune to the forces of politics and ideology.
Right.
And speaking of ideology, Chaplin's reflections on his own career and the evolution of cinema are particularly insightful. He initially resisted talking pictures, clinging to the power of pantomime.
Interesting.
Why was he so resistant?
Well,
Was it purely artistic?
yeah.
Or was there a deeper fear of change at play?
He believed in the universality of physical comedy, its ability to transcend language barriers.
Right.
It was the foundation of his art. And perhaps he feared losing that connection with a global audience.
It's interesting because he eventually embraced sound and dialogue in his films.
He did.
Yeah.
But not without some hesitation. He saw the potential of sound,
Right.
but also recognized the challenges it presented. How to maintain the delicate balance of humor, pathos, and social commentary in this new medium.
It's a tension many artists face,
It is.
staying true to their artistic vision while adapting to a changing world.
And Chaplin navigated that tension brilliantly, creating some of his most enduring work in the sound era.
So as we delve deeper into Chaplin's world, what stands out to you as his most significant legacy?
Oh, it's hard to pin down just one thing. His influence on comedy is undeniable.
Yeah.
I mean, he practically invented the language of slapstick, crafting this universally recognized character that resonated across cultures and generations.
He made us laugh. He made us cry.
Exactly.
He made us think.
And he did it all without uttering a word in those early films.
Yeah, that's incredible staying power.
It is.
But does that kind of comedy, that blend of physical humor and social commentary,
Right.
still resonate with audiences today?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
In today's world of fast-paced editing, special effects, and cynical humor,
Right.
Chaplin's work might seem almost quaint.
But I wonder if there's something timeless about his ability to connect with those basic human emotions.
Yeah.
You know, the longing for connection, the struggle against adversity,
Right.
the triumph of the underdog.
I think you're right. Those are universal themes that transcend time and technology.
Yeah.
And the way Chaplin used physical comedy to convey complex emotions like loneliness, resilience, even political satire.
Right.
It's masterful.
He proved that sometimes the simplest gestures can be the most powerful.
Yeah.
A raised eyebrow, a waddle, a perfectly timed pratfall.
Right.
They speak volumes.
They do.
And maybe, in a world that feels increasingly chaotic and divided,
Yeah.
there's something comforting about Chaplin's humor.
It's a reminder that even in the face of hardship, there's room for laughter, for kindness, for a little bit of whimsy,
Right.
and that maybe, just maybe, the little guy can triumph in the end.
It's a message we could all use a little more of these days.
You could.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of Charlie Chaplin, what's the one takeaway you'd like to leave with our listener?
I think it's this. Don't let the iconic image of the tramp overshadow the complex and fascinating man behind the persona.
Good.
Chaplin was a study in contradictions, driven yet vulnerable, ambitious yet sensitive,
Right.
a master of his craft who never stopped learning and evolving. Explore his films, absolutely,
Yeah.
but also delve into the life, the experiences, the relationships that shaped his art, right?
You might be surprised by what you discover.
Beautifully said. And for our listener out there, we hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity, encouraged you to revisit Chaplin's films, or maybe even dig a little deeper into his life and the era he lived in.
Definitely.
There's a whole universe of insight and entertainment waiting to be discovered.
As Chaplin himself might say, a day without laughter is a day wasted.
So go ahead, embrace a little laughter today.
Absolutely.
And thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the life and legacy of the one and only Charlie Chaplin.
It was a pleasure.
We are KB and Jasmine, and welcome to Beyond the Silver Screen.
Welcome to our deep dive into the films of Ingmar Bergman.
Oh, I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, you've sent over some really fascinating material.
Yeah.
And I'm, really excited to kind of unpack it all with you.
Yeah.
These recurring themes and visual motifs that make Bergman's work so captivating. We're going to explore, this idea of a geography of the soul, the recurring motif of turning,
Right.
and, just how Bergman kind of tackles some of these big, big questions about life, about existence,
Yeah.
against the backdrop of, often like an impending apocalypse.
Yeah, and it's like he doesn't just present those like as abstract concepts, right?
Right.
He really brings them to life through these incredible, like, vivid images and
Yeah.
these really powerful, like, character dynamics.
Yeah, it's interesting. So before we get lost in this, geography of the soul,
Okay.
let's start with the basics. Bergman often sets his films against this looming sense of like societal collapse or an impending apocalypse, which is heavy stuff. But
It is, yeah.
what's the significance of that backdrop? Like, why is that such a recurring element in his work?
Oh, Well, I don't think it's necessarily about the literal end of the world.
Okay.
It's more that he's using like this looming threat to kind of strip away
Mm-hmm.
all those superficial layers of human existence
Yeah.
and kind of force his characters and us as viewers to confront those like rawest, the rawest questions when everything is falling apart, you know?
right.
What truly matters? What gives life meaning
Mm-hmm.
in the face of oblivion?
Yeah, that's heavy stuff. And it makes me think about the geography of the soul
Yeah.
that you mentioned. So how does this landscape, this map of human existence, play into these questions of meaning and mercy?
Well, think of it this way.
Okay.
Bergman kind of envisions the world not just as like a physical space, right?
Right.
But also as this landscape of different like states of being. Each individual occupies a certain location on this map. Some residing in these like darker corners, others in brighter, more hopeful spaces. And all of these locations, these states of being, they're all like interconnected.
Oh, that's interesting.
His characters are constantly like navigating this terrain, moving from like isolation to connection,
Mm-hmm.
from despair to these like fleeting moments of hope.
So instead of just physical locations, we're talking about like emotional or spiritual states.
Exactly.
Exactly. That makes sense. Could you give me a concrete example of how this geography of the soul manifests in one of his films?
Sure. Take a film like The Silence, for example.
Okay.
Two sisters confined to a hotel room in a foreign city, seemingly, on the brink of war.
Right.
Now, the physical space is incredibly claustrophobic, but the film is really about that emotional distance between the sisters, each trapped in their own internal world of isolation and longing. That isolation, that inability to like truly connect, that's like a key landmark in Bergman's geography of the soul.
It's like the external world mirroring the internal struggles of the characters.
Exactly.
Yeah, and this feeling of isolation, of
Yeah.
being cut off from genuine connection,
Mm-hmm.
it seems to be a recurring theme in his work.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that Bergman sees abandonment as a kind of first death. What did you mean by that?
Well, he argued that true despair, it doesn't come from physical death itself, but from this like profound sense of being abandoned, betrayed, left, utterly alone. And this abandonment, it can manifest in different ways. The loss of faith, the breakdown of relationships, even a sense of being abandoned by like society as a whole.
Right, like just completely cut off and alone.
Yeah, and it shatters our sense of security and
Yeah.
just throws us into this existential crisis.
Yeah, and that I can see how that ties into his use of these apocalyptic settings.
Yeah.
When the world itself is falling apart,
Right.
that sense of abandonment is just magnified.
Exactly.
It's like being abandoned by existence itself.
Yes, and how characters respond to this feeling of abandonment
Right.
becomes like central to their journey within this geography of the soul, right? Some might react with rage,
Yeah.
others seek distractions,
Right.
and some even try to create a sense of like self-sufficiency
Right.
in the face of utter isolation.
Just trying to build their own world.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And this brings us to another recurring motif. You mentioned this act of turning.
Yes.
You said it's a visual metaphor that embodies this tension between connection and isolation.
Right.
Could you unpack that a bit more?
Well, imagine, right, two faces close together,
Right.
yet they're looking in opposite directions. That simple image kind of encapsulates the central struggle in many of Bergman's films.
Yeah.
We crave connection, we yearn for intimacy, but at the same time, we're afraid of vulnerability. We're afraid of getting hurt. So we turn away, seeking refuge in isolation, even as we like long to reach out.
It's that push and pull, right?
Exactly.
I think everyone can relate to that feeling.
I think
being
that's it.
caught in this constant push and pull between needing others and fearing the potential pain that comes with intimacy.
Right. It's that sort of primal fear.
Right.
But it's not just about romantic relationships.
No, it's bigger than that.
It plays out in families, friendships,
Mhm.
even in our relationship with like the wider world.
The world in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So do we turn towards the complexities of life,
Right.
embrace the messiness, or do we shield ourselves, turn inwards,
Right.
and seek comfort in solitude?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that tension is at the heart of like many of Bergman's most powerful scenes,
It is.
I would say.
Yeah.
So we have this apocalyptic backdrop,
Right.
a landscape of the soul, where characters are navigating isolation and connection.
Yeah.
And this constant tension between turning towards and away from each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's already painting a pretty complex picture.
It is.
Where do themes of shame and humiliation
Right.
kind of fit into all of this?
Well, Bergman, he doesn't shy away from exploring these, like, darker emotions.
He does.
He sees shame and humiliation as intertwined with our actions and even our perception of ourselves.
Right.
In a way, they become landmarks in his geography of the soul,
Okay.
defining the locations some characters inhabit.
It reminds me of Shame, the film Shame.
Yes.
Which is set in a world ravaged by war. And the characters are literally surrounded by shame.
Right.
The shame of a collapsed society, the shame of their own actions in the midst of this chaos.
Yeah, and it's not just about individual actions either.
Right.
Bergman taps into, like, this deeper anxiety, the fear that, like, existence itself might be inherently shameful, even humiliating, you know? That sense of being fundamentally flawed permeates so many of his films.
It's not a lighthearted topic,
No.
but it's incredibly thought-provoking.
Yeah, and I think it's that honesty, that willingness to delve into the darker corners of human experience that makes his films so compelling, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. He confronts those uncomfortable truths
Yes.
about ourselves, about the human condition,
Yeah,
in a way that few other filmmakers dare to do.
I think so, yeah.
But, it's not all darkness and despair, right?
No, of course not.
Even in these bleak landscapes, Bergman offers these fleeting moments of hope and connection.
You're right, he doesn't leave us completely stranded in the darkness,
No.
Even in the midst of those desolate, emotional landscapes, there are these glimmers of light, a shared meal, a dance,
Yeah.
a tender embrace. These small acts of love and compassion offer a sense of redemption, reminding us that even in a world on the brink, human connection can still offer, like, a flicker of hope.
It's like finding a tiny wildflower growing in the cracks of a crumbling building.
Yeah, I love that image.
It makes you appreciate the resilience
Yeah.
of beauty, of human connection,
Yeah.
In the face of such bleakness.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And, speaking of contrast, I think it's time we delved into Bergman's use of the circus in The Clown's Evening.
Yeah.
It becomes this, like, fascinating microcosm of life itself.
Okay.
Where he juxtaposes the, like, drudgery and humiliation with these moments of, like, pure exhilaration and beauty.
That sounds like a fascinating layer to add to this exploration.
Yeah.
But before we dive into the world of clowns and circuses,
Okay.
we'll need to take a quick break.
Sounds good.
We'll be right back to continue our deep dive into the world of Ingmar Bergman. We were just discussing those contrasting elements, of hope and despair in Bergman's films. And you mentioned the circus in The Clown's Evening as this microcosm of life. So what is it about the circus that makes it such a compelling setting for Bergman to kind of explore these themes?
Well, the circus, with its, like, spectacle and performance, it offers a unique lens through which to examine those, like, raw, almost primal aspects of human nature.
Okay.
Like, Bergman peels back the curtain, so to speak, and reveals that vulnerability beneath the performance, the human cost of creating that illusion of joy and wonder.
So it's not just about the clowns and acrobats. It's about the people behind the masks, their relationships, their struggles.
Right.
Their very human desires and disappointments. It
reminds
me of those contrasting elements you mentioned before.
Yeah.
The laughter and the cruelty, the entertainment and the exploitation.
Exactly, yeah. Think about, like, the inherent duality of the circus.
Okay.
On one level, it's pure entertainment.
Right.
It's escapism. It's, like, awe-inspiring feats of skill and daring.
Right.
But there's this, like, underlying current of sadness, this constant struggle for survival, the exploitation that often goes hand in hand with, like, spectacle.
It's like he's saying that even in a world designed to create illusions, there's no escaping those complexities of human existence, that tension between the desire for escape and the harsh realities of life. It plays out so vividly in the circus setting.
And that tension, it ties back into the idea of, like, Bergman's geography of the soul, doesn't it?
Right.
Those characters in The Clown's Evening, they're drawn to the freedom and, like, the exhilaration of the circus life, but they're also trapped by its demands. Its constant cycle of, like, performance and travel. They're searching for connection,
Right.
for meaning,
Mm-hmm.
but they're constantly confronted with those, like, limitations of human relationships.
Right.
Fragility of their own existence.
It's like that feeling of being stuck,
Yes.
of not being able to escape
Yeah.
those darker corners of that internal landscape, no matter where you go.
Exactly.
Even the clowns who are supposed to make us laugh
Right.
are carrying this weight of sadness, this awareness of
Yeah.
life's fragility.
Bergman, he doesn't allow us to just simply laugh at the clowns
Right.
or marvel at the acrobats.
Right.
He forces us to, like, confront the darkness that lurks beneath the surface.
Wow.
And the clown figures in particular become, like, symbolic of that fine line between laughter and cruelty, between entertainment
Yeah.
and the exploitation of human vulnerability.
It's a stark reminder that even in those moments of lightness and amusement, there's
Right.
always this undercurrent of melancholy, this awareness of the,
Yeah.
darker aspects of human nature.
Mm-hmm. And that brings us to another, I think, crucial aspect of Bergman's work.
Okay.
His exploration of love.
Particularly in a film like Smiles of a Summer Night,
Okay.
where he delves into the complexities of romantic love,
Right.
the illusions of passion,
Mm-hmm.
and the possibility of finding, like, deeper connection
Okay.
over time.
I'm curious to hear more about that. It seems like a departure from
Yeah.
some of the heavier themes we've been discussing.
Yeah, it's definitely a lighter film.
Okay.
Is Smiles of a Summer Night a more optimistic film?
Yeah, yeah.
It's certainly more playful, I think,
Okay.
with a lighter touch than some of his other works. But even in this romantic comedy,
Mm-hmm.
Bergman grapples with those, like, profound questions
Yes.
about the nature of love and desire.
Okay.
He explores the different stages of love, the fleeting nature of passion,
Mm-hmm.
the disappointments that, like, inevitably arise in human relationships.
So even in a film about love, Bergman doesn't shy away from the complexities, the
Yeah.
potential for heartbreak, the
Yeah.
challenges of sustaining connection over time. Yeah, it's very real in that sense.
But there's still a sense of hope, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely.
Like this longing for lasting connection, even if it's elusive.
Right.
Yeah.
Smiles of a Summer Night is this, like, delicate dance between hope and disillusionment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the characters, they're yearning for fulfillment,
Right.
but they're also grappling with the limitations of, like, human relationships.
Mm-hmm.
The realization that love doesn't always conquer all.
Right. It doesn't always have a fairy tale ending.
No.
Yeah, it's interesting how Bergman uses the setting of, like, a Swedish summer night
Mm-hmm.
to heighten those emotions,
Yeah.
that sense of longing and desire.
Yeah.
The long twilight hours, the magical atmosphere.
Yeah.
It's like a backdrop for, like,
Yeah.
dreams and illusions, for
Yeah.
for the possibility of something
Right.
extraordinary happening.
You've hit on, I think, like, a key element of the film.
Okay.
Bergman uses that setting to create this sense of, like, heightened reality
Okay.
where emotions are amplified and the boundaries between, like, dreams and reality, they become blurred.
Mm-hmm.
It's a world of enchantment,
Yeah.
but it's also a world where the characters are forced to confront their own illusions about love and happiness.
Yeah, and even though the film was made decades ago,
Mm-hmm.
those questions about,
Yeah,
what makes love last, what
Right.
creates true connection, they still resonate
they do.
so deeply today.
Absolutely. We're all still searching for those same answers.
Yeah, we are. And Bergman, as always, is more interested in, like,
Yeah.
asking the difficult questions
Right.
than providing easy solutions.
He shows us that love can be both
Yeah.
the source of, like, immense joy and profound sorrow.
Right.
It can bring us together,
Yeah.
but it can also tear us apart.
It's that honesty, that
Yeah.
refusal to, like, sugarcoat the
Yeah.
complexities of human relationships
Yeah.
that makes his work so enduring, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And it's not just about romantic love either.
Okay.
Bergman, he explores that full spectrum of, like, human connection,
Mm-hmm.
the bonds of family,
Right.
the complexities of friendship,
Mm-hmm.
the fleeting moments of connection we experience with, like,
Right.
strangers.
Just those moments where you connect with someone.
Yeah, and interwoven with these themes of, like, love and connection is this
Right.
ever-present awareness of time's passage,
Mm.
the finite nature of, like,
Right.
human existence.
Yeah, that sense of urgency of time slipping away, it permeates so much of his work.
Yeah.
It makes you think about how we choose to spend the time we have.
Right.
and how those choices shape our lives, our relationships.
Our legacies.
And that awareness of mortality connects to, I think, a broader anxiety that Bergman explores in his films, particularly in Shame and the entire trilogy, this growing unease about the modern world.
Yeah.
The feeling of being trapped in a system.
Yeah, like beyond our control.
That's a fascinating transition.
Yeah.
It seems like we're moving from like the personal to the political, from individual struggles to a broader societal unease.
Right. Exactly.
How does Bergman kind of depict?
Well, he uses these
the shift in his film.
Stark almost, like apocalyptic visuals. You know, desolate landscapes, bombed out cities, the constant presence of like military forces, and these images. They reflect the anxieties of the time, the Cold War, the threat of nuclear annihilation, the feeling that humanity was on the brink of, like self-destruction.
So his characters are not just grappling with their own personal demons, but also with this sense that the world itself is collapsing around them. So we've got love, death, the passage of time, and this growing sense of unease about the modern world. It's a pretty heavy load to carry. But Bergman seems to weave it all together seamlessly.
He does.
What's the thread that connects all of these themes? What's the message he's trying to convey through all of this?
Well, I think like at its core, Bergman's work is about like this search for meaning in a world that often seems meaningless. You know, his characters, they're constantly grappling with loss, with betrayal, with the fragility of human connection. And yet they keep searching for those like fleeting moments of grace, those glimmers of hope that make life worth living. It's an existential struggle that resonates deeply with like
I think so.
audiences, regardless of like the time or place.
You know, it makes me think about how Bergman portrays himself as a storyteller. In Fanny and Alexander, he seems acutely aware of like the power of narratives.
That's a great point.
To shape our understanding of the world, both for good and for ill.
Bergman understands that stories, they can offer solace, that they can help us like make sense of chaos and find meaning in the face of like suffering. But he also recognizes that potential danger of stories, how they can be used to manipulate, to control, to create illusions that distract us from, like
from the truth. So as viewers, we need to be aware of the stories we're being told, the narratives that shape our perceptions of the world. And as individuals, we need to be mindful of the stories we tell ourselves, the narratives that define our lives.
Precisely.
And Bergman, as this master storyteller, is constantly playing with this tension, challenging us to question the narratives we create and consume. He's asking us to look beyond the surface, to delve into the complexities of human experience, and to find our own meaning amidst the chaos and uncertainty of life.
That's a powerful message.
It is.
And I think it's one of the reasons his films continue to resonate with audiences today.
I think so.
You know?
They challenge us to confront these existential questions in a way that feels both timeless and deeply personal.
Absolutely.
You know, throughout this deep dive, I've been thinking about like what resonates most with me in Bergman's work. And I keep coming back to that honesty, that willingness to explore the messiness of human experience without judgment or sentimentality.
He's not afraid to show us the ugliness alongside the beauty, the despair alongside the hope.
And it's that like unflinching gaze. That willingness to confront the darkest corners of the human psyche that makes his films so powerful and ultimately so hopeful.
I agree.
He's not offering easy answers or simplistic solutions.
No.
He's simply holding up a mirror to ourselves. Forcing us to acknowledge the complexity of our own nature, the beauty and the darkness that coexist within us all.
Beautifully said.
It's like he's saying that even in the midst of despair, even in the face of our own flaws and failures, there's still a possibility for connection, for redemption, for finding meaning in the journey itself.
That's a perfect note to end on for part 2
Yeah.
of our deep dive.
Okay.
We'll be back shortly
Sounds good.
to wrap things up and offer some final thoughts
Yeah.
on the enduring legacy of Ingmar Bergman.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the films of Ingmar Bergman.
Yeah.
We've covered so much ground already.
Yeah.
For the geography of the soul, the complexities of love, and the anxieties of the modern world. As we kind of wrap things up here, what are some key takeaways you hope listeners will carry with them from our conversation?
I think Bergman's films, at their heart, are really a testament to the power of questions. He doesn't offer those easy answers, but he compels us to confront these fundamental mysteries of human existence.
Right.
He asks what's the nature of love? How do we face the inevitability of death?
Right.
Where do we find meaning in a world that can often feel meaningless?
Yeah.
These are questions that resonate across generations, and Bergman's exploration of them, I think, continues to provoke and inspire.
So it's not about finding those definitive answers. It's more about embracing that journey of exploration.
Yeah.
Of grappling with these profound questions.
Exactly. Bergman's characters, they're constantly searching, questioning, wrestling with doubt and uncertainty. And it's through that very struggle, that process of confronting those uncomfortable truths, that they discover, moments of grace, connection, fleeting beauty. It's in that questioning, in the seeking, that they find glimpses of meaning.
It reminds me of the image you described earlier, the two faces close together but looking in opposite directions.
Right.
It's such a powerful visual representation of that inner tension we all experience.
Right.
That push and pull between our desire for connection and our fear of vulnerability.
It's the human condition in a nutshell. We yearn for intimacy, for belonging, but we also fear rejection, pain, the potential for loss.
Yeah.
And Bergman captures that duality so brilliantly in his films. He doesn't shy away from the complexities of human relationships. He shows us the beauty and the ugliness, the joy and the sorrow, the light and darkness that coexist within us all.
And that's what makes his work so enduring, isn't it?
I think so.
That honesty, that unflinching gaze at the human condition. Bergman's films, they challenge us to look inward, to confront our own vulnerabilities and desires, and to find our own way through the labyrinth of human existence.
He's a master at revealing the layers beneath the surface of peeling back the facades we present to the world, and exposing those raw, vulnerable human beings beneath. And he does it with such empathy and compassion. He doesn't judge his characters. He simply observes them with all their flaws and contradictions, and invites us to do the same.
So for someone who's never seen a Bergman film, where would you suggest they start? What's the gateway drug, so to speak, into this incredible world?
That's a tough one. There are so many masterpieces to choose from, but if I had to pick just one, I might recommend Wild Strawberries. It's a beautiful and moving film that explores themes of memory, regret, and the possibility of redemption. It follows an aging professor on this journey, both literal and metaphorical, as he confronts his past and searches for meaning in the twilight of his life.
It's a great starting point.
It is.
And once you've experienced the magic of Wild Strawberries, you'll be hooked. There's no turning back.
I couldn't agree more. Bergman's films are a gift. They're a challenge, an invitation to delve deeper into those mysteries of human experience. They might not always be easy to watch, but they offer profound rewards for those willing to take the journey.
And as we bring this deep dive to a close, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought. Bergman's films often explore the idea of finding meaning and mercy in a world filled with darkness and uncertainty. So I ask you, dear listener, where do you find those glimpses of hope and connection in your own life? What sustains you in the face of the unknown?
That's a beautiful question to ponder, and a fitting way to end our exploration of Bergman's world. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you'll continue to explore the films of this extraordinary artist and discover the profound truths they hold.
Thanks for listening.
We are KB and Jasmine, and welcome to Beyond the Silver Screen.
Yeah. Today we're stepping into the captivating world of Italian cinema, specifically the works of Federico Fellini.
A fantastic choice. Fellini is a director who truly pushes the boundaries of cinematic storytelling.
Absolutely. We're going to trace his journey from the neorealism movement, exploring how he developed his signature style, those dreamlike narratives, and the poetic imagery he's so well known for.
It's fascinating how Fellini's career mirrors the transformations happening in Italian cinema post-World War II. We had this surge of neorealism, aiming to depict the unvarnished realities of post-war Italy.
So are we talking a documentary-like approach?
In a way, but with a strong artistic flavor. Think Roma, Città Aperta, or The Bicycle Thief.
Ah, classics.
Exactly. They use non-professional actors, real locations, and narratives grounded in poverty, unemployment, the social injustices of the time.
A stark contrast to the propaganda films of the fascist era.
Precisely. It was about presenting the genuine struggles people faced. And Fellini began his journey in this near-realist landscape.
Starting as a screenwriter, right?
Yeah. Yes, but even in his early films as a director, like The White Sheik and I, Vitelloni, you can see him veering away from strict near-realism.
What do you mean by veering away?
Well, near-realism primarily focused on the external world, on social issues. Fellini, however, became increasingly captivated by the internal world of his characters, their dreams, their fantasies, those psychological complexities.
So that's where those surreal, dreamlike elements come into play.
Exactly. He started incorporating more poetic imagery, dream sequences, symbolic elements that transcended the purely social. A prime example of this shift is La Strada.
Ah, La Strada, with those traveling performers.
It has traces of neorealism, like the impoverished setting, but it delves deeper, exploring their inner lives, their longings, their quest for meaning amidst a harsh world.
I remember finding it incredibly moving, especially Gelsomina, that naive young woman with Zampano, the strongman.
Gelsomina is such a powerful character, and the scene where she encounters the phantom horse, that's pure Fellini, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
He uses visual metaphors to explore innocence, exploitation, the fleeting nature of happiness. It's a film that generated quite a bit of controversy back then.
Because he seemed to be moving away from neorealism.
Some critics felt he was abandoning its principles, but Fellini wasn't abandoning it. He was evolving it.
Taking it in a new direction.
Precisely. Fellini said he aimed to show rather than demonstrate. He wasn't about preaching. He wanted to evoke emotions, to make you feel, to question your own perceptions of the world.
And he certainly achieved that. Speaking of evoking emotions, La Dolce Vita is a film overflowing with glamour, decadence, and this sense of disillusionment with modern life. And of course, who can forget Anita Ekberg in the Trevi Fountain?
Oh, that's an iconic scene. Visually stunning, but layered with symbolism.
Right. It's not just a pretty picture.
Exactly. The Trevi Fountain represents Rome's beauty and history, yet it's also a tourist trap, a place for escapism.
And Ekberg's character embodies that duality, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. She's alluring, yet there's an emptiness, reflecting the superficiality Fellini observed in post-war Italian society. And then we have Marcello, that jaded journalist drifting through this world of parties and fleeting romances.
Always searching, never quite finding what he's looking for.
He embodies that Fellini-esque protagonist, lost in a world that feels increasingly empty.
What about that opening scene? The helicopter carrying the statue of Christ over Rome. Such a powerful image.
Brilliant, isn't it? It instantly sets the stage for the film's central themes. The clash between spirituality and materialism, tradition versus change, the quest for meaning in a society seemingly lost. It's amazing how Fellini can convey so much with a single image. And when it comes to exploring the creative process and artistic anxieties, we have 8.5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
8.5, a film that takes us deep into the mind of a director battling creative block.
It's a fascinating exploration of the creative process, blurring the lines between reality, dreams, and memories. You're never quite sure what's real or imagined, which mirrors the protagonist's state of mind.
Guido Anselmi, played by Marcello Mastroianni, feels like Fellini's alter ego, grappling with his creative demons, past relationships, and the pressures of filmmaking.
Absolutely. And Fellini even critiques intellectual film criticism within the film.
Oh, how so?
Through the character Domie, who analyzes Guido's film in this dry, academic way, which Fellini clearly sees as missing the point.
He believed in the power of images, of emotions, not overanalyzing things.
Exactly. Fellini's films are meant to be experienced, felt, not dissected. They're about stirring emotions, sparking your imagination, and making you question how you perceive the world. And that really gets to the core of what makes Fellini's films so distinct. You mentioned the dreamlike quality, but there's more to it than that. There's this very deliberate construction to his visuals.
Oh. Okay, so what should I be paying attention to as a viewer when I'm watching a Fellini film?
Think of it as a heightened reality. You'll see extravagant sets, elaborate costumes, but there's always this underlying sense of the grotesque, a darkness that prevents things from becoming too romanticized.
You see that a lot in La Dolce Vita. All those dazzling parties, yet there's an emptiness to them. Like everyone's desperately seeking something they just can't quite grasp.
Exactly. And that juxtaposition is everywhere in Fellini. Sacred and profane imagery colliding, beauty intertwined with decay. Even his characters embody this.
Yeah, they're so larger than life, these eccentric figures on the fringes of society, but also deeply human in their flaws and their struggles.
Like Gelsomina in La Strada. So innocent, yet possessing incredible strength.
Not your typical leading lady.
Fellini's women are rarely typical. They challenge, they're sensual, sometimes even threatening to the male characters.
Yeah.
But they're never just simple objects.
Right, they have this depth to them.
Take Seragina in 8½, for instance, the prostitute who dances on the beach.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
She's both a figure of desire and this almost Earth Mother figure. She embodies that sacred and profane duality we were talking about.
It's like he's using these female characters to expose something in his male characters. Their desires, their anxieties, all laid bare.
You got it. Fellini's films often center on male protagonists wrestling with masculinity, with their place in the world. And they often fail to genuinely connect with the women around them.
So we're not just talking about pretty pictures here, right? It's about these deeper psychological and societal themes that he's grappling with.
Exactly. Fellini doesn't shy away from exploring sexuality, religion, politics. He tackles the changing landscape of post-war Italy, but he does it through this incredibly rich visual language, packed with symbolism and metaphor.
It's not about being spoon-fed answers.
No, you're invited to participate in finding the meaning, and that's what makes his films so rewarding.
You can watch them multiple times, and each time you uncover new layers.
And even if you don't fully grasp every bit of symbolism, you can't deny the sheer cinematic artistry, the music, the lighting, the camera movements. It's all so deliberate, so evocative.
Fellini was a true master. He understood how to use cinema to transport us, challenge us, and awaken feelings we didn't even know we had.
Which brings us to the heart of Fellini's legacy.
What he left behind.
Exactly. He didn't just make films, he created entire worlds.
Worlds that were both deeply personal and strangely universal.
Drawing on his own memories and experiences, but tapping into something that resonates with all of us.
Like Amarcord. Fellini revisits his childhood in Rimini, but it transforms into this fantastical, almost mythical portrayal of memory and yearning for a lost era.
And here's the thing, even though he moved away from the strict confines of neorealism, his films never lose sight of the human condition.
Right, even with those more exaggerated characters and stylized settings, those core themes remain.
Loneliness, desire, the search for meaning, they're all still present.
So he took neorealism and turned it into something altogether more poetic.
More dreamlike. More Fellini-esque, even.
Exactly. He took everyday struggles and elevated them through myth and metaphor, forging a cinematic language entirely his own.
And his influence is undeniable.
So many filmmakers were inspired by him.
He showed them that cinema could be more than just entertainment. It could be poetry, a way to explore the deepest recesses of the human psyche.
You can see his influence in so many directors. Scorsese, Gilliam, Lynch.
All those who dare to push boundaries, embrace the surreal, the unconventional.
And it goes beyond technique.
It's about that freedom to be different, to trust your gut as an artist.
He gave other filmmakers permission to break the rules.
To trust their instincts, to create works that were both deeply personal and universally relatable.
His impact extends far beyond film.
You see Fellini in music videos, fashion photography, advertising. His imagery, his use of color and composition.
His whimsical characters, they've become part of our shared visual language.
It's as if he expanded our collective imagination, giving us new ways to see the world, understand ourselves.
And he did it all with such joy, such playfulness.
His films are a celebration of life. Messy, chaotic, beautiful.
They remind us that even when things are tough, there's always room for wonder, for beauty, for the unexpected.
And that, I believe, is Fellini's greatest gift.
To embrace the absurd, find the poetry in the everyday, and never stop dreaming. It's amazing how he creates these worlds that feel intensely personal, yet universal at the same time.
That's the mark of a true artist, I'd say, to take those personal experiences and translate them into something that speaks to the human experience as a whole.
And to do it in a way that's both visually stunning and emotionally resonant. I think that's what makes his films feel so timeless. They connect with us on such a visceral level, even if we can't always grasp every symbol or metaphor.
We've talked about the visuals, the characters, the recurring themes, but what about Fellini's impact on cinema as a whole? What would you say his legacy is?
Well, I think it's safe to say he revolutionized filmmaking. He broke free from the conventions of traditional storytelling. He embraced the surreal. He showed the world that cinema could be a truly subjective art form.
He really opened the door for so many other filmmakers who wanted to delve into the inner lives of their characters, experiment with different forms and structures, and use film to express those unique visions.
Yeah, think about directors like Scorsese, Gilliam Lynch. You can definitely see Fellini's influence in their work. That willingness to push boundaries, to embrace the dreamlike, the bizarre, the unconventional.
It's not just about the specific techniques. It's more that spirit of freedom, daring to be different, trusting your own artistic instincts.
He gave other filmmakers permission to break the rules, to trust their intuition.
And create works that were both personal and universal.
And his influence isn't limited to film either.
No, you see Fellini's fingerprints on so much. Music videos, fashion photography, advertising.
It's everywhere.
His imagery, that use of color and composition, those whimsical characters, it's all become woven into our visual language.
He's one of those artists whose work has permeated our culture, even if people aren't consciously aware of it.
It's like Fellini expanded our collective imagination. He gave us these new ways of seeing the world, interpreting reality, even understanding ourselves.
And he did it all with such a sense of joy, such playfulness, this sheer cinematic exuberance.
His films are a celebration of life in all its messy, chaotic beauty.
They remind us that even amidst the chaos and disillusionment, there's always room for that wonder, for beauty, for the unexpected.
And that, I think, is the greatest gift that Fellini left us.
To embrace the absurdity, to find poetry in the everyday, and to never, ever stop dreaming.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of Fellini, I want to leave you with this thought. What is it about Fellini's films that resonates with you? Which images, which characters, which themes have stayed with you?
Because the true beauty of Fellini's cinema lies in its ambiguity, its open-endedness. It invites you to find your own meaning, your own interpretation.
His films are like dreams, full of these strange and wonderful images, waiting to be decoded, waiting to be brought to life by each viewer.
So to all our listeners, I encourage you to dive into the world of Fellini. Let his films wash over you, challenge you, inspire you, and who knows, you might just discover a little bit of yourself along the way. But until then, keep thinking about those silver screens and what might lie beyond. Hello, and we are KD and Jasmine. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving into the world of Alfred Hitchcock, the master of suspense. You'll get a glimpse into the man behind all those, iconic thrillers, from his early days in London to the heights of Hollywood.
What I find so fascinating about Hitchcock is how his personal life, anxieties, and even his quirks often found their way into his films. They shape the themes, the visuals, even his casting choices,
Oh, I'm so curious to see how that plays out. Let's start at the beginning then.
Yeah.
Hitchcock's childhood. He grew up in London's East End, a far cry from the glitz and glamour of Hollywood, right?
Right. Picture young Alfred in the early 1900s, living above his family's fish shop in a working-class neighborhood. It was a bustling, sometimes gritty environment.
Not exactly a breeding ground for a world-famous filmmaker. But I guess every story has an unexpected start, huh? Was there anything about his childhood that kind of hints at his future career?
Well, his upbringing was quite strict. His father, a typical Cockney merchant, emphasized discipline and order. And then there was his mother's devout Irish Catholicism, which instilled a strong sense of guilt and anxieties. So you can see this push and pull between order and transgression, a theme that appears in a lot of his films.
That's interesting, that tension between light and darkness playing out in his own childhood. Did this have a direct influence on his filmmaking, would you say?
It's hard to say for certain, but there's a story Hitchcock often told about being locked in a jail cell as a child by his father. It was apparently a punishment for a minor infraction meant to teach him a lesson.
Whoa. Talk about a traumatic experience. I can see how that would leave a mark on anyone, especially a young child.
Exactly. Hitchcock claimed this instilled in him a lifelong fear of both the police and confinement. Whether the story is completely true or embellished, it points to a deep-seated anxiety that resonates through many of his films.
Now that you mention it, so many of his films deal with wrongful accusations, innocent people trapped, characters battling forces beyond their control. It's like you can trace those themes back to that childhood fear.
Precisely. And it's not just the themes either, but also the visuals. Think about his frequent use of shadows, confined spaces, that feeling of being watched, all of that like taps into this primal sense of unease.
It's almost like he's taking those anxieties and putting them on screen for the audience to experience. Makes you wonder if it was cathartic for him in a way.
It's certainly an interesting theory. And speaking of things that captivated a young Hitchcock, he was absolutely fascinated by crime reports in the news of the world. Imagine him poring over these lurid tales of murder and intrigue. Early inspiration, perhaps.
Definitely sounds like it.
Yeah.
It's like he was already drawn to the darker side of human nature, to those stories of transgression and suspense. It's all starting to come together.
You're getting it. But it wasn't all doom and gloom. Hitchcock also had a love for literature and a strong artistic side. He was a fan of authors like Edgar Allan Poe, G.K. Chesterton, and Gustave Flaubert.
I remember reading somewhere that he was particularly drawn to Madame Bovary. What was it about that story that resonated with him?
You know, it's a story of passion, adultery, and ultimately tragedy. An ordinary person caught in extraordinary circumstances. You see this theme emerge again and again in Hitchcock's work.
It's the contrast that makes it so compelling, right?
Yeah.
The seemingly mundane world, like suddenly cracking open to reveal the chaos underneath.
Exactly. And this brings us to Hitchcock's entry into filmmaking. How did this London kid with a fascination for the dark and dramatic find his way into the world of cinema?
Yeah, it's not like there was a film school around the corner. What were the key turning points that set him on this path?
Well, it was a combination of ambition, chance, and some good timing. After his father died, young Alfred needed to contribute to the family income. He ended up taking some engineering courses, but his heart wasn't in it. He was a film buff. Remember, this was the early 1900s when cinema was a whole new world of storytelling.
A whole new world unfolding right before his eyes. I can imagine how exciting that must have been.
And fate intervened. He saw an ad for a title card designer at a London studio called Famous Players Lasky. He jumped at the opportunity, his foot in the door, to learn the craft from the ground up.
Starting at the bottom, huh? Not afraid of hard work, I guess.
Oh.
What did he do at the studio besides design title cards?
He was like a sponge, soaking up everything about filmmaking. He learned about set design, script writing, even camera techniques, all by observing and assisting the directors. He was driven to master every aspect of the process.
That hunger to learn and grow, to push yourself beyond your comfort zone. That's so inspiring. Those are qualities that can take you far in any field, not just filmmaking.
Absolutely. And for Hitchcock, that meant learning from the best. In the mid-1920s, he was sent to Germany to work on a co-production with UFA, the leading German studio at the time.
Wasn't that the studio known for its really innovative and influential filmmaking style? All that expressionism, distorted sets, and dramatic lighting, that focus on psychological states. Seems like that would have a huge impact on him.
You're right. He was deeply influenced by directors like F.W. Murnau, who made the iconic film The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Hitchcock was fascinated by Murnau's use of visuals to create unease, to create a distorted reality.
So he's absorbing all this new knowledge, experimenting with different techniques, and brewing up his own unique style. What an exciting time for him.
Definitely. And then there's another crucial influence we need to consider, his relationship with Alma Revel.
Ah, Alma. She wasn't just his wife, but also his creative partner, his editor, and his confidant.
Their partnership was remarkable, both personally and professionally. They met at the Islington studio, where Alma was already a seasoned film professional, working as a script girl and editor. In fact, she was even more experienced than Hitchcock at that point.
So he was learning from her too. Then it sounds like she played a vital role in his development as a filmmaker.
Absolutely. They married in 1926, and Alma continued to be a major force in his career. She would read his scripts, offer feedback, help with editing, even contribute to the writing.
Wow, a true partnership. It seems like she really helped shape his vision.
There's a story in Spoto's book about their time in Germany during the filming of Hitchcock's first directed film, The Pleasure Garden. They were on a tight budget, and Alma ended up taking on multiple roles: script supervisor, assistant director, even hostess to the demanding Hollywood star Virginia Valley. Talk about wearing many hats.
She sounds incredible.
Mm-hmm.
It's clear that Alma's influence on Hitchcock's work can't be overstated. What a dynamic duo they must have been.
Absolutely. She was his sounding board, his trusted collaborator, and her keen mind helped shape the stories and characters that would captivate audiences worldwide. It's really fascinating to trace Hitchcock's journey from those early silent films to his breakout hits. You can see him developing his craft, experimenting with different genres, all while laying the foundation for his signature style.
So let's dive into some of those early works. Were there any films that stand out as particularly Hitchcockian, even in his early years?
Well, The Lodger from 1927 is often considered his first true Hitchcockian thriller. It features a mysterious stranger, a string of murders, and an innocent man caught in a web of suspicion. You can see the themes of mistaken identity and duality taking shape.
So he was already exploring those darker aspects of human nature that would become hallmarks of his later work. What about the visual style of The Lodger? Did it exhibit any of those classic Hitchcockian techniques?
Absolutely. Even in the silent film, you see his mastery of visual storytelling, the use of shadows, expressive close-ups, the way he builds tension through camera angles and editing. It's all there.
It sounds like he had a natural instinct for using the camera to tell a story. Was there a specific film where he really started to experiment with sound in a unique way?
His 1929 film, Blackmail, was groundbreaking. It was one of the first British films to use sound, and Hitchcock, embraced the new technology. But he wasn't content with just using it for dialogue. He experimented with different sound effects, used silence to create tension, and even played with the audience's expectations of what they would hear.
Can you give us an example of how he did that?
Think about that famous scene in the British Museum where the word knife seems to echo in the mind of the guilt-ridden heroine. It's a brilliant use of sound to convey a character's psychological state.
It's like he's using sound to get inside the character's head to make the audience experience their anxiety and fear firsthand. That's so effective.
Exactly. Hitchcock understood that sound could not only enhance the narrative, but also amplify the emotional impact of a scene.
So throughout the 1930s, Hitchcock directed a string of successful thrillers that really solidified his reputation as a master of suspense. Films like The Man Who Knew Too Much, The 39 Steps, and The Lady Vanishes were big hits. What set these films apart from other thrillers at the time?
You see him refining his craft, perfecting his use of suspense, humor, and those unexpected twists and turns that kept audiences on the edge of their seats.
And his work with actors during this period?
Yeah.
Did he already have a reputation for being demanding on set?
He did have a reputation for being very specific about what he wanted, but he also understood how to draw out those nuanced performances that would bring his characters to life.
It sounds like he was really honing his skills as an auteur, shaping every aspect of his films, from the visuals to the performances.
Absolutely, and that brings us to a pivotal moment in his career. His move to Hollywood in 1939, signing with legendary producer David O. Selznick, was a major turning point. It gave him access to the resources and talent of Hollywood, allowing him to take his filmmaking to the next level.
And his first American film, Rebecca, was a smash hit, even winning the Academy Award for Best Picture in 1940. That's a pretty impressive debut.
Yeah.
What made Rebecca such a success?
It's a masterpiece of Gothic suspense with a haunting atmosphere, memorable characters, and a plot full of twists and turns. It also showcases Hitchcock's ability to adapt his style to the Hollywood system, working within the studio structure while still maintaining his unique vision.
So he was able to navigate the complexities of Hollywood without compromising his artistic integrity. It sounds like he found the perfect balance. What came after Rebecca?
He didn't slow down. He followed it up with a string of successful films throughout the 1940s: Foreign Correspondent, Suspicion, Shadow of a Doubt, and Notorious. Each of these films explored different facets of Hitchcock's recurring themes in interesting ways.
I'm particularly intrigued by Shadow of a Doubt. It seems to take those childhood anxieties we talked about earlier and put them right at the center of an American family.
Yes, it brings that darkness into the heart of a seemingly ordinary family.
Wow.
With a charming uncle who harbors a dark secret.
And visually, he was always pushing boundaries. The long takes in Rope, the dream sequence designed by Salvador Dali in Spellbound, the use of forced perspective to create a sense of vertigo in Vertigo. It's mind-blowing.
He was always pushing the boundaries of what was possible on screen, experimenting with new techniques to make his stories more emotionally impactful.
It sounds like he wasn't satisfied with just telling a story. He wanted the audience to feel it, to be completely immersed in the experience.
Exactly, and he did it with incredible precision and control. Every camera angle, every edit, every sound effect, all carefully calculated to manipulate the audience's emotions and draw them deeper into the world of the film.
And then came the 1950s, the decade where Hitchcock reached the pinnacle of his success. This is the decade of Strangers on a Train, Rear Window, To Catch a Thief, The Wrong Man, Vertigo, and North by Northwest, a string of masterpieces that really showcased him at his best.
It's an incredible run of films, each one a classic in its own right.
And of course, we can't forget Psycho, released in 1960, a film that shocked audiences, pushed the boundaries of cinematic violence, and changed the horror genre forever.
Psycho was a game changer for Hitchcock and for cinema as a whole. It showed his willingness to take risks, to defy expectations, and to explore the darkest corners of the human psyche.
It's amazing to think about the impact of Psycho. It's one of those films that people are still talking about and debating decades later.
It's a testament to Hitchcock's enduring power as a filmmaker, his ability to tap into our deepest fears, the anxieties that lurk beneath the surface of everyday life. That's what makes this film so timeless and relevant.
We've talked about Hitchcock's early work and his incredible run of films in the 40s and 50s, but his career didn't stop there. He continued making films throughout the 60s and into the 70s, a time when cinema was going through some major changes. How did he adapt to those changes, and did his style evolve at all?
Hitchcock's later films offer a fascinating glimpse into how he responded to the shifting landscape of cinema while staying true to his core themes.
So let's talk about The Birds, released in 1963. It's such a visually striking film. Those terrifying bird attacks and that unsettling sense of nature turning against us. It feels different from his earlier work, more overtly horrific. Would you agree?
The Birds was a departure for Hitchcock in many ways. It was his first foray into natural horror, and he relied heavily on special effects to create those unforgettable bird attack sequences.
I remember reading about his insistence on using real birds as much as possible. What a logistical nightmare that must have been.
It was, but Hitchcock was determined to achieve a level of realism that hadn't been seen before. He worked with trainers, used mechanical birds, even attached live birds to the actors' clothing to get the effect he wanted.
Wow. Talk about dedication to his craft. Those scenes with Tippi Hedren, the film's star, enduring those attacks, they're both terrifying and awe-inspiring.
There's been a lot of discussion about Hitchcock's treatment of Hedren during the filming of The Birds. Some argue that he pushed her too far, putting her in real danger.
Yeah, it's a complex and troubling aspect of his legacy that we can't ignore. It seems his relationship with Hedren continued to deteriorate during the filming of his next film, Marnie.
Yes, unfortunately, Marnie, released in 1964, is another fascinating film that delves into the complexities of a woman with a troubled past. It explores themes of trauma, obsession, and repression. It's visually stunning, but also quite disturbing in its depiction of violence and manipulation.
It's a reminder that Hitchcock, despite his genius, was a flawed individual, capable of both great kindness and cruelty, and his relationships with his actresses were often intense and complicated.
It's important to acknowledge these darker aspects of his personality while appreciating his artistic achievements.
Absolutely, we can admire his work without condoning his actions. So, how were Hitchcock's films received in the later part of his career?
Well, some critics argued that his later films, like Marnie, relied too heavily on spectacle, sacrificing character development for shock value.
It seems there was a shift in tone and style. They became more experimental, visually driven, and perhaps darker. Did he continue making films after Marnie?
He did. Throughout the late 60s and into the 70s, he made films like Torn Curtain, Topaz, and Frenzy. These films may not have reached the same heights as his earlier masterpieces, but they all bear his unmistakable style.
His penultimate film, Frenzy, released in 1972, is a particularly brutal and an unsettling thriller.
Frenzy features a graphic strangulation scene that shocked audiences at the time. It's as if he was pushing the boundaries of what was acceptable, even as he was entering his 70s.
Maybe he was trying to stay relevant in a changing film world, or maybe he was grappling with his own mortality. Those themes of aging and loss do seem to surface in his later work.
It's an interesting thought. His final film, Family Plot, released in 1976, was a return to a lighter tone, a comedic thriller that some saw as a fitting farewell to his long career.
Family Plot is an enjoyable film, but watching it, knowing it was his last, you can't help but feel a sense of melancholy. What a legacy he left behind.
Hitchcock was a cinematic genius, a master of suspense, and a visual storyteller who left an indelible mark on film history. But he was also a flawed individual, capable of darkness and cruelty.
It's a complex legacy, one that continues to fascinate and disturb us. His films prompt discussions and debates about their themes, their techniques, and the man who made them.
And that's what makes him so compelling. His films weren't just entertainment. They were provocations, challenges to our sensibilities. He invited us to explore the darkest corners of our own minds.
Wow, what a journey this has been. We've covered so much ground, but I have a feeling this is just the start of your exploration of Hitchcock's work.
He's one of those filmmakers you can revisit again and again, discovering new layers of meaning and brilliance each time.
Maybe you'll even start to see the world a little differently, noticing those shadows, those moments of suspense, those hints of darkness hiding beneath the surface of everyday life.
As Hitchcock once said, always make the audience suffer as much as possible.
I think he meant that in the best way possible, of course. He wanted his audiences to truly feel, to experience the full spectrum of human emotions, even the uncomfortable ones.
And that's the mark of a true artist, isn't it? To make us think, to make us feel, to challenge our perceptions and leave us wanting more.
So dive deep, everyone.
Happy listening.
And we'll catch you next time.
See ya!